Welcome to the Intuitive Websites Internet Marketing Podcast, bringing you the country's top podcast on the subject of internet marketing, with your hosts Glenn Thayer and the CEO of Intuitive Websites, Thomas Young.
Welcome back, folks, to another podcast here. Tom and I are going to review strategies and recommendations on really how to look at web-based marketing campaigns that you can really use to go across all different marketing channels. And we're going to talk about some different tactics you can use because obviously, Tom, a web marketing campaign is a little bit different than a regular print marketing campaign or other types of media, even though it's part of that. So I guess for the purpose of starting this podcast, how do we define a web marketing campaign?
Well, it basically is various ways of communicating with web users. And we've talked about having consistency in the look and feel of your website and all your marketing materials and so forth. What we're going to talk about today is having campaign-focused messaging and communicating programs with the users of your website, but not just your website, all the different properties on the web where your brand is exposed. And one of the biggest differences between and it is the biggest difference between the website campaigns and the old school, and they still do them, I guess, not so much old school, but print campaigns, is that a print campaign is a big investment, and when it's gone, it's gone. And once you buy all those postcards and send them out, you cannot make a change. It's out there. The web can be changed literally within an hour. You can launch a campaign, see results, and make modifications immediately.
But aren't we seeing now, though, that a lot of the marketing companies and ad agencies are doing a combined approach, though? So they're using print to push their online campaign.
Absolutely, absolutely, and so you should do that. I mean, you should have a great campaign that works on both mediums. But for the purpose of this podcast, I want to focus on the web-based stuff because let's say you're a company that doesn't do print, or you don't have a budget for print, or you're not going to do postcards, or you're not going to do television even or radio. You're going to focus on the web. It is a way of really driving qualified traffic and increasing conversion rates because instead of going, with just a shotgun approach, is we got a bunch of stuff to sell on our website or a bunch of content, you start to hone it into a very specific need for a user, and whether it's a specific message for a user or an offer, a contest, or an activity or something like that. Whatever it is, the user should have a high degree of interest in it, and then they'll come to your website and convert at higher levels. The challenge really is to get it across all the different types of media that's out there now, which would include things like email and Facebook and your website or landing pages and on and on and on.
Well, because that can create some different interesting scenarios these days because obviously email, people have spam filters and that is huge. And I know some can be set up that if you have a constant contact, if it goes into it's being sent by one of the or MailChimp or Vertical Response or any one of the email providers, it automatically goes into the spam folder.
It can, absolutely. And so, and the other thing which is interesting is that not everyone who subscribes to your social media efforts subscribe to your email. And you think it's kind of silly. Well, if you're going to be on my Facebook page and looking at what's going on there, why wouldn't you subscribe to an email newsletter? Well, they don't. And even if they did, they may not get it in spam. So, in today's web marketing world, it's more important than ever to have this uniform and unified, consistent messaging across all these platforms. And then make sure that the website also is consistent with what you're getting out there. Even a pay-per-click campaign is an example. If you're going to have specific messaging on your pay-per-click campaign, you need to have that on your landing pages and throughout all your web marketing properties.
Well, how do the campaigns differ if you have an e-commerce campaign versus maybe like a lead generation, maybe if you're a consulting firm or something that's not selling a product? How do those differ?
It's interesting that you asked that question. It's a very important question too, because if you're in e-commerce, your focus is going to be on the offer, on the product and the pricing and the offer around that. If you're doing lead generation, like the podcast we did earlier, you want to focus on content and knowledge. Now, there's some overlap between the two because, for example, you could have products that you need to support it with content. But for the most part, that's how the two are different. So if you're going to go to Facebook with an e-commerce website and you're going to sell products directly, you're focused on the offer or on the contest or on the event, on some kind of activity around those products, right? If you're focused on lead generation and driving quality leads from your site, then you're going to focus on knowledge, your knowledge in the marketplace, your positioning as an expert with that knowledge, and on the actual specific content that people will get from your site. Because that's what generally drives a lead, is they say they look at the site and they say, this is a person that knows their stuff. I'm going to contact them and see if we can work together.
Well, what different marketing channels on the web can be used for campaigns?
Well, there's so many. And what has happened now with social networking is social networking has now changed kind of the face of companies on the web.
Right.
It's the homepage used to be your face to the world, right? But it's not the case anymore. And Google has driven that change too, because Google may not index your homepage, and people might be coming from a variety of pages. So
Google becomes your homepage. I think is that's really what
the Google search result.
The Google search result becomes your homepage.
It can, along with all these other properties. So the answer to the question is that, first of all, you have to look at your web pages. The homepage is always a good starting point, but what other web pages are getting found? You have to look at your email marketing, anything you're doing on social networking, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and so forth. Then you have to think about your search engine efforts, either through AdWords or your SEO work, and find out what pages are the most popular landing pages on your website, and realize if you've got a campaign going on and people are coming in through that page, if that campaign's not on the page, they may never see it, and they may never be connected to that.
Right.
And then finally, the other thing is to think about is partner websites, which are websites where people will go to get either your direct content or content similar to yours, and eventually will come and link to you. This is where successful campaigns that are driving results, need to be linked across all these different platforms.
Well, how do you coordinate those efforts? Because obviously, if you're trying to link across all these different platforms, you need some type of consistency. But there's also the same issue comes out where you have a different user base, especially let's talk social media. You have a different user base that's going to be on LinkedIn than you're going to have on Facebook. It's a different audience. And
Yes.
so how do you coordinate those efforts in the different channels, still talk to different audiences, and still have a coordinated campaign?
It's a really good question. I think that you have to understand your user and how they use your different media channels, how they use Facebook versus email and so forth. And probably the thing that you need to do, which is a no-brainer, but people don't do it, is you have to have very easy to find multiple points of entry for each of these channels. So if you've got a Facebook page, have a link to your landing page or to your home page. If you have an email campaign, have a link to your Facebook page on your email campaign. If you have a Facebook page, have a link to a subscription for your email newsletter on your Facebook page. All these things have to be linked together, because if you know your user base, you'll realize they have preferences toward one side or the other. And we've talked about this before. People are impulsive on the web. So if they say, hey, I think I'll take a look at this and go deeper, that's a good thing, but make it easy for them to do that.
What about writing copy? Because obviously if you've got copy for your Facebook page, should that copy be different from what you're going to send out maybe in an email campaign if by chance those audiences may differ?
Yeah, we've talked about this with our clients, and what we've come up with is that your website should have a voice. Your website should have the voice behind the brand, or who is that person or thing, and that voice should be consistent on all channels. Now, it can be a little different in different channels, but you've got to be careful that if you have multiple writers, that they're all speaking in the same voice and in the same manner. You don't want to, have one voice be obviously more rational and logical in one media, and then another media it's more playful and silly. I mean, it's just not going to. Users are going to have they're going to have a disconnect, just like they would with your brand disconnect. So it's important that your content has that voice. And in your strategy meetings, you should ask the question of, what is the voice of our company? Now that we have this opportunity to talk to so many people in such an inexpensive way through the internet, how are we going to do that? And I'm not talking about I'm talking about the nonverbal part. How are we going to describe who we are as a business? Are we playful and fun? Are we kid-like and childlike? Are we logical and analytical? Are we sarcastic? Are we, what are we? Are we edgy and different? And then that voice needs to be consistent throughout all your properties and your campaigns.
So that would be also through demographics, whether it's through age demographics, if you're talking age multi-generations. Who are you speaking to? So how are you going to speak to somebody? I mean, obviously, if it's an AARP campaign, that's going to be a lot different tone than a Toys R Us campaign.
That's right. And now with the workforce the way it is, I mean, you literally can reach people that are prime for your product and services in their early 20s and in their early 60s. So you have 40 years or more of generation gap in there, and you've got to be able to figure that out. And so the bottom line is know your user base by channel, by the channel that they're visiting.
So how do you avoid the clutter? I mean, obviously, if you have multiple points of entry and you're utilizing social media, you're utilizing email campaigns, you're utilizing Google AdWords, you're utilizing all of these different things, how do you avoid having too much stuff that may be sending different messages?
Yeah, the clutter part is really interesting. We've talked about this in other podcasts as well. Is there is no exact right answer, but it is important to take a stand and try something. And a big part of what you do when you set up marketing campaigns in any medium or channel is you have to be set up for trial and error. And so I would really encourage people to try scaling back on things and looking at the effect of that, and then maybe putting a few of those things back and taking others off and watching the results, watching the click-through rates and watching the results for the campaign. So do A/B testing, and try different strategies. But it does take, you have to be a brave marketer to take a stand and say, no, we're not going to have 15 different things on this page. We're going to have 3 or 4. And it actually should produce better results for you.
Well, and that's the great thing with the web is you can always take it down. You can always change it. So literally
Yes.
on the fly, if you find something that this offer is not working or it's not getting the results you want, you can change it immediately.
Yeah.
And if your viewers or your visitors say anything, the great thing with the web, you can post something right then and there. Hey, we're trying something new. Here's what we're trying. Because transparency is getting really big, and I know that's a whole nother podcast.
That's right, it is.
But that's something right there is trial and error is so easy on the web. And as long as you're willing and open to be making those mistakes, the web visitors are always going to say, yeah, we get that. You know, when Amazon, if Amazon goes down and it's down for 5 minutes, you're going to hear a lot of people complaining.
That's
when
right.
Amazon goes, hey, sorry, we know it was down. Here's what we were doing. Here's what happened. It's like, oh, got it. Hackers went in there. Here's how we beefed up our security. Now they're sharing information with everybody on how they fixed it. Let's make cyberspace a better place.
Yes, right.
So, those are one of the big things there. So what are the key items for our listeners that they need to be checking out, Tom?
Well, I've got a few action items for you. This podcast is more about strategy and thinking through this whole process of web marketing campaigns. But one of the things you can do at the top of the list here is to have a meeting and begin brainstorming campaign ideas, things that you want to test, whether it's a messaging idea. We just had all the slew of back-to-school offers and back-to-school campaigns that inundated the web recently. And we manage several e-commerce websites. And you know what? Those things really work. The back-to-school offers are really powerful because people have got to go back to school and they're looking for deals, they're looking for value. So that would be one that's a no-brainer. But think about if we were to schedule out for the next 12 months a list of campaigns we want to try that would be email focused, Facebook focused, and so forth. What are some ideas that we can put on the table and test? Surveys, send us a photo contest, free games you can put on your website, great content that you haven't thought of before that maybe customers have requested. And then, when you brainstorm these ideas and you decide you're going to do a test or run one, make sure you have very adequate tracking systems in Google Analytics and that you can track all your website conversion points through the process and all the different channels, email, Facebook, etc.
Well, then you know what works and what doesn't work. That's the big thing.
Right.
I mean, we talk about Google Analytics all the time, and it's so important.
Absolutely, and you can measure your ROI on this. I mean, you should be able to measure the hours that went into developing the campaign, executing the campaign, and the results that come from that. And finally, the last thing I want to say is that it's better to launch a program and do something than to wait for the perfect idea to come across, and then it's all wrapped up and nice and pretty and ready to go. That usually doesn't happen. And if you wait for something to be perfect, you don't get anything done. And I'll tell you that your competitors will, and they'll get something out there before you. They'll learn from their mistakes, and then the next promotion they do will be better while you're sitting back waiting for yours to be perfect. So launch a program, get something out there, test it, and then learn from those results and try it again. And I think that this web marketing campaign focus is really the future of the internet. We're seeing that more and more, and it's really what Facebook is driving for business. for business uses. And it's really what email has been trying to drive for a long time. But, email just has limited conversion rates because of what you mentioned, Glenn, with spam and all that. But just a lot of people are inundated with email. They don't respond to it. So,
I was gone.
Yeah, think about a comprehensive strategy and go wider than that.
Yeah, it's easy. I was out of the office for 2 days, and I came back to 400 emails. And I can guarantee you there was some great content and some newsletters, and I subscribed to very few of them. Those were deleted instantly.
Yeah, there's this new attitude out there that because we're so inundated with messaging, that if we're gone for a few days or we're out of the loop or we miss our messaging cycle, we're much more inclined to just delete those messages and tell our friends, try me again, than we are to say, give me, I'm not going to sleep tonight. I'm going to stay up all night and get to these messages, darn it. I mean, it's overwhelming.
Yeah, it's easier to send a blanket email to everybody and say, hey, if it's urgent, give me a call.
That's right. And what marketing campaigns do then is it allows people to have more exposures to your messaging through a wider variety of mediums, and then you don't get stuck with email. You have a lot of other options.
And if you plan it, this is the big thing, is planning it. You plan a campaign. If you plan it, you're not going to be missing all of the holes. You're not going to have all the holes in your campaign. You plan it, you know what to expect, you know where to go, and then, like you said, once you launch it, you can always tweak it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's very, very simple.
So true.
Well, folks, thanks for joining us again. And if you have any subjects that you want us to cover that you haven't heard lately in our podcast, don't hesitate to drop us an email at info@intuitivewebsites.com. We'll be happy to get to those. We do respond to your emails, and you can check out all of the wonderful podcasts that we have at intuitiveblog.com. Thanks for joining us.
This has been an Intuitive Websites Internet Marketing Podcast. For more information and to see all the available podcasts and much more, visit intuitiveblog.com. If you have a website you would like us to review or an issue you would like to see covered in future podcasts, email us at info@intuitivewebsites.com.